even if you're looking at investors to come in, getting some private equity or something, if they know that the business isn't hyper dependent on you, it's less risk from them. They know that the business will survive if something happens to you.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
To you. If something happens to any CEO and there's not a second in place, there's nobody that can cover things, it's harder to get money too.
So how do we identify? Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. I am your host, Rob Schultz, and I have a retread. Lisa Harrington is in the house. Lisa, you came on early on in our shows. I was listening to it the other day. It was fantastic. That's why you're on again. I just felt like my side, some of the sound and stuff, man, hopefully we've got better, sound quality on this stuff now. And we have like the new Las Colinas office.
Beautiful
with the
office.
Schultz Wealth back here.
Really love it.
Yeah. So thanks for coming back.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and really excited to have you. You are you're a coach, so you coach not NFL teams or anything like that, but more like a business coach.
That's right. Leadership coach.
Leadership coach. You get into. I know the last time we talked a lot about values and things like that. Some of this deep stuff that sometimes business owners don't really want to talk about, and you're really good at getting that out of us and sometimes even making us feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, that's the goal.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Oh, because man, I'm already uncomfortable.
I always say if you're not a little bit uncomfortable, are you doing it wrong? Because we should be stretching ourselves.
Absolutely.
We should be pushing a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that small discomfort, we don't want it to be painful, but that small discomfort forces you to really do that self-assessment, push yourself a little bit, maybe reach for something that's a little bit beyond you so that you grow as a company, as a person.
So your company is Abiding Strategy, and you've worked with some friends and clients of mine, and so we're very well connected within the community.
Yeah.
And I love and respect your work. That's why you're here. So tell us what you do.
Okay, in a nutshell.
Yeah, just real quick.
My own strategy plan, which is one of my hallmark products. I help people build their strategy plans. But my own strategy plan says that my values are truth, friendship, service, and grace.
Okay.
My mission is build better bosses with a vision towards joy in the workplace. I want people to have as much fun in their work as I do in mine. And most of the time, according to tons of research, especially by Gallup, the best boss brings along the best people. They stay for the boss. They are loyal because of the boss. If you're a real leader and you're a good boss, then people will perform for you and they'll follow you and they'll, walk through fire for you, all that stuff. So it was actually when I read the book, First Break All the Rules, years ago by Marcus Buckingham, I thought that's going to be the key. If I'm a really good boss, people will work well and we'll have good results. And so then in my coaching practice, that's what I decided to focus on is how can you be a better boss so that you can be more productive?
So what I'm thinking about when you talk about that is, there's management training, okay, and then there's coaching for the leader or the boss themselves. And what I kind of hear you saying is that, hey, if you can get your own house kind of in order, you don't have to do a whole lot of managing per se.
That's right.
It's just you're leading, and people will want to do the right thing and help you grow. You're not having to learn all these management tricks and tools and all this kind of stuff. Yes, let's not
trick our employees.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. There's management tricks out there. Well, really, let's not trick them.
Right.
Let's lead them. And there's a big difference between management and leadership. And that's not something that's new. Everybody knows that. But not everybody understands that leadership training is different than management training because you manage things and you lead people.
So processes, things like that, that's more on the management side. Right. Whereas, a leader is about, how how you present yourself,
That's
how
right.
how you represent, how you show what your values are and what's important and what's not. And
Well, and you're and in leadership, you're also thinking about your own psyche
yeah,
and your own headspace. And it's not counseling what I do. I'm not certified as a counselor or a psychiatrist or anything, but it is about your headspace. It's about how are you reacting to things. What is your executive presence? How do you handle it when something goes wrong? Do you model the best behavior, or do you blow up and throw things, or
mm,
pull into a shell or get panicked? And the thing is, our brain, the way our brain functions. I have a very casual student of brain science. I am not a scientist, but I study it a lot. And our brain will hijack us sometimes. We feel a little threatened, and all of a sudden, all of our judgment goes out the window. Our amygdala, our instinct takes over.
mhm,
We can't think straight, and we react badly.
sure,
And so if we can keep ourselves out of threat mode and keep ourselves feeling safe, which is it's a practice, then we react better when our employees need us. And that's one of the hallmarks of what I talk about: communication and stress management. And I do the management consultant. I mean, if somebody needs help writing processes or procedures, I do that within the practice of coaching them for leadership. I don't do it separately. So if you're already my client, I'm going to help you however you want, as long as we're doing the coaching part. So management consulting kind of fits too, but
sure.
my thing I love to do is help people be the best version of themselves.
So give us an example of, a really good leader, I guess, and then just kind of give us an example of somebody who's probably not filling those shoes very well, so we can kind of see where we are.
Well, I can probably tell you a story about one person from both directions because of the
Okay.
change that he made over time.
Oh, that's cool. So the
Been
same person that
Yeah,
was able to transform. There we go.
yeah. We
Okay.
were, let's see, we started about 6 or 7 years ago. He
Mm-hmm.
was my client, a newer CEO, big company. And he was one of those guys that thought more hours means more productivity. And
Mm-hmm.
so he was texting his team in the middle of the night. He was emailing his team, at 5 a.m. He was expecting responses because he was sending it at that time. And it wasn't out of being mean. It wasn't that. He
Yeah.
loved his people. He
Yeah.
still does. But the idea of we work all the time because our mission is so important and what we do for the world is so important. And so he thought, more hours, more time in, nose to the grindstone, and that just doesn't sustain itself. After a couple of years, he was worn out. His people were worn out, and he comes to me and became a client in one of my peer groups. And he would ask me to be on call, all the time. And I said, listen, I don't mind if you occasionally have to text me at 7 o'clock at night, have a quick chat, but I'm not going to put my life on hold because of what you're doing, and you shouldn't ask your employees to do that either. So I explained to him about rest, and I talked to him about self-care, and we talked
Mm-hmm.
about why it's so important that we keep our own health in line. So when I talk to my folks, we're always talking about physical health, mental health, spiritual health even. And he finally kind of understood that when you work your people that hard, it's a short-term play. And I like to work in the long term.
Yeah.
For me, a vision is a 50-year legacy. It's a 100-year legacy. It's what are you leaving the world for its benefit? How is it better because you were there? And he realized he was wearing his people out and they weren't thinking straight. They were making mistakes. It was just too much. And so he had the money. He added some employees. He restructured a little bit with my help. And now his people are much more productive. They've acquired a couple companies. They've grown a bunch. They're getting their work done, but they're not all burned out
Yeah.
and just wrecked all the time. And he was losing employees because nobody can sustain that for a long time. And now he's got good longevity with the folks. So that's,
Okay.
it's a fun story about somebody who made the transition.
Awesome. So I just have to work less then.
You really do. You really do. There's studies out there now that say
Yeah.
if your brain is properly rested, you will make better decisions. You'll work faster. You'll be more efficient. You won't have mistakes to correct. There's an old saw. I think my dad taught me this. It's something like if you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you'll have time to correct it?
Mm-hmm.
It only costs you more time and money if you push so hard that you start making mistakes. because then you got to fix those mistakes. So the prioritization of our own health is really on the scale of great leaders, but it's not what we were taught up till maybe 20 years ago. I mean, we had the machines and the factories and the lines and the how many widgets can you put out, and that concept is gone now. We're mostly a service society. So, and even if you are on a manufacturing line, I think those widgets are coming out right. If you've got them on 10 and 12-hour shifts, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I also think that founder owners start out and they do have to work long hours. A lot of it is on them, on their shoulders. There's a lot of stress, and there's more that needs to be done than there's hours. But then I think there's a transitional shift probably that should occur at some point. And I remember that happening for me. I remember just working all the time, and I had to. I had a mortgage and kids.
But you were the founder, you're the owner, and that's your choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's different when you're dictating that to 300 people below you.
But then it's hard to turn that off, and
we have a saying for that in the coaching business. It's called founder's syndrome.
Right. Absolutely. It's really hard to turn that off. It feels very uncomfortable, when you start having space within the workday. But that space is what I found as I have more and more of it. That's where the creativity comes from.
That's right.
That's where the aha moments that move you into better, exciting directions. If you don't have any of that space as a leader, it's really, really hard to kind of know what direction you need to go, like long term, as you said.
It is. It reminds me of another fun story. I had a client about 2 years, smaller company, maybe 50 employees. He comes in after working with me for a couple of years and kind of looks at me. I said, "What's up?" He said, I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And I said, "Well, it's good." And we talked about that. Why is it discomfort maybe a good thing? He says, I don't feel like I have anything to do anymore.
Yeah. There is that feeling.
And I applauded him. I said, "Good for you. That's where we want you." And he's like, "What?"
That is not a comfortable feeling. I hate that.
But here's the deal, and you know this because of your line of work. If you can't be gone a month, you have nothing to sell. There is no business to sell if you as the founder, owner, CEO, leader can't be gone a month.
Yeah.
Because if they buy it and it all depends on you, and you're going to be gone because you're selling and whatever, retiring or whatever, you have to be able to be gone that long to have anything to sell.
Man, I'm really liking this session. So far what I've learned is I need to work fewer hours.
That's right.
And I need to take a 1 month vacation.
Longer vacations. That's right.
It's funny that when we first talked because I listened to it here recently, you were talking about you should try to get out 2 weeks. Now you're at a month.
Now it's a month.
And what's funny is that since then, last October, I took my first 1 month vacation.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was a little uncomfortable, but it was fun. We went and rented a house in Charleston for an entire month.
Oh, I love Charleston.
Yeah,
I lived there for 3 years. It's a cool place.
Yeah, we did too. We lived there when I was in the Navy.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we lived in this house for a month, and what you had said previously was true. It takes a long time to wind down. Okay. And then you get wound down, and then you start winding back up.
Right. Because you're coming home.
So it was funny because like the first week, it was okay. There were 2 weeks in between that were just awesome. And then the last week, I was kind of ready to get back.
Anxious.
Yeah.
Horse back to the barn, we always used to say.
I was like, okay, I'm
Ready
done. Let's go. But 1 month vacation.
That's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah.
It's really important. There's research now that talks about that and how it's not just for you. It's not just for your rest.
Yeah.
It's to see if the business can survive without you.
Sure.
And not forever, but can you be gone a significant amount of time? And it's great for planning. It's great for talking to the bank about getting more money. It's great for selling. It's great for even if you're looking at investors to come in, getting some private equity or something. If they know that the business isn't hyper dependent on you, it's less risk for them. They know that the business will survive if something happens to you. If something happens to any CEO and there's not a second in place, there's nobody that can cover things, it's harder to get money too.
So how do we identify the things that that we're doing as business leaders that we can shift off to somebody else? How do you help people identify what those things are and get them to do that?
Well, the goal is to be able to have somebody who's a second in command who can take everything. Not
Okay.
that they would always have everything, but they can do, at least at some level, everything you do.
Okay.
Now, you're not going to give them possibly, signature authority for certain things. That's obviously, that has to be carefully managed for many reasons. But if you can start with the things that are more routine and the things that are less visionary, the things that are more closely related in time. So you really, as a CEO, I tell people, if you can be thinking about 5 years from now, you shouldn't be thinking about yesterday. You shouldn't be thinking about next week even.
Mm-hmm.
You should be the visionary saying, where are we going to be in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? And your second, whatever you call that person, chief staff officer, chief operating officer, whatever, that person should be doing the things that have to do with tomorrow and next week and even next year. You should be pushing way out into the future, I don't know, 80% of your time, 70% of your time, talking to clients about long-term stuff, maybe figuring out new products to sell, maybe thinking about how you are going to structure, I don't know, your second office like you did here, or whether or not you're going to consolidate offices in 3 years because the market is shifting for whatever your product is. You got to be out in the future. And so if you bring that near-term stuff to your second to start with, that's where it begins. And then eventually you teach them about the visioning and that, or you hire me to teach them about the visioning. And then we go to laying that out for all the leadership. Like, how far out into the future can leaders be thinking, and delegating to the lower levels those things that are more immediate. And it's not the only thing, but it's a place I like to start because it gets the CEO's head in the right space for thinking long-term, for stepping back. If you're thinking long-term and you're laying on the beach somewhere and you're gone for a month, you're still working.
Yeah, you're still thinking about it.
You're still thinking about the long term in your business.
It's hard to turn that off.
Hard to turn off for good leaders. That doesn't mean you have to be in the office all the time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean you keep everyone else from getting into that space, but it's just where your focus should be.
So earlier, though, we talked about, as a leader, as a owner, founder, leader, whatever it may be, that you are kind of setting, I guess you're setting the tone, the values, mm-hmm. All that kind of stuff. Does that get harder as you kind of separate yourself a little bit, take 1 month vacations, and, you're spending maybe less time, with the troops? Mm-hmm. How do you, have you seen where that's become an issue where, you're all of a sudden the leader's kind of off over here somewhere now?
Yes, I have seen that.
And so how do we balance that?
Yeah. So we're, first of all, when we step away for that month, it's planned, it's known.
Yeah.
You've arranged things, you're gone for the month, but somebody's covering this stuff. You're not doing it in a peak time of your business. You're making sure that it's. But the other thing is, I have seen it where the owner stepped too far away, and didn't take control, and the second in command that they chose was just a tyrant and really wrecked some things, lost a couple employees. And then the owner had to come back and literally move back to the city where the office is. And
so this owner was pretty much not present at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Virtually a lot on meetings and stuff, but not in the office much. And that did become a problem. And it wasn't because he shouldn't have been able to do that. It was because the person he selected to sort of be in charge on the floor or in the office was just not the right person. So there's that too. We have to make sure that if you move away for a more than the month vacation, if you're gone more than that, make sure whoever's running things for you is of your values and thinks the way you do. And the other thing is, if you have to be gone a lot, think quality over quantity. So when you are in the office, be very intentional. That was my word of the year last year, intentional.
I love that word. It's one of my favorite words.
Because it's so important. Intentionality and consistency really can solve almost any problem. Just like communication, stress management makes you the better leader. Those are the two things I focus on. And we talk about 100 other things, but if you can get all that right, it really, really helps. And if you can be intentional about the time you spend when you are there, and we're not talking about taking 3 months in a row. We're talking about one month vacation a year, or 2 2-week vacations a year, or whatever it is, 2-3
Yeah.
weeks, whatever it is.
And then spending some
when
time, like I said, away from the team with
Yeah.
space, trying
Right.
to, work on long-term stuff. I can see where you could find yourself, separating to a certain extent from the team, becoming a little bit aloof.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can see where you would have to be very careful there.
Very intentional.
Yeah.
When you're there, when you're in the office,
Got to be there.
turn off your phone, put on D&D, push your computer aside, really look them in the eye and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that a lot nowadays.
No.
It's really hard to get that eyeball time.
It is.
So we have to do that. We have to make sure that when we are in the office, we're very intentional. We see everybody we need to see, and that they know we're accessible in between. Like, can they text you or email you if they need it?
Yeah.
But what are your values of your organization, and how are you modeling that? Are you using those words? Are you talking about it? Are you putting those words in the newsletter?
And you have to be present to a certain extent to be able to model that stuff.
You do, unless your second is just right. Now, I have another client who's stepping back completely. She's going to be in the office one day a week,
mm-hmm.
and she's going to be working from home the rest of the time. She's got another person in place that she's training to sort of take over for her. And so she's in connection with the office all the time, but she's physically only there once a week. And this is for the new person's benefit. I don't know if you know, most churches, when a preacher retires from a church, they ask that preacher to attend somewhere else. Because the new preacher who's in place can't really gain the respect of the congregation if they're always turning to look to see what the old preacher thinks every time something is said. So generally speaking, in most churches, they ask the retiring preacher to go to a different church to worship.
Yeah, they do the same. Yeah.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
In business. If you're training someone to be your second and maybe completely take over, and you become a retired absentee owner only,
mm-hmm.
you get that right person in place, you got to step away a little bit at a time and let them do the work and gain the respect, and have people not turning and looking at you to see, well, what does she think, before they answer the new boss. So there's that, and that's tricky. That's where coaching comes in. This is the kind of stuff we talk about, and I help with what's the right path to make that happen.
And you just described, we talk with business owners a lot about transition, obviously, because that's our focus for business owners. They're looking to try to figure out what that next step is for them. And you mentioned one, where you basically continue to own the company, and yet you're not operating it. You eventually become that absentee owner, where you're not there. You have set up a leadership team that can take this thing. Man, that's hard.
It is. It's hard.
I've had over the years, I've had different clients that, maybe that was the initial plan, and then they end up selling it.
Yeah.
And usually it's because they weren't able to build up that leadership team to the level that it needed to be. Like everything worked great as long as they at least, showed up in the morning, most times, right? To be able to just kind of run interference on things. But as soon as they really were not there, it just
became a problem.
It became a problem. Have you ever seen it where success? It sounds like you have, where you've had some owners be able to do that. What was the trick?
And it doesn't. It's a couple things. First of all, the day you buy the business or start the business is the day you start planning to sell the business.
Well, yeah.
You can't run the business like X, and then 3 years before you want to retire, you switch to Y. It doesn't work. So you have to be building that always. You're always looking at, how are we structuring this thing so that I get the most money out of it when I sell it. I consider the absentee owner thing to be temporary. It's not supposed to be forever.
I gotcha. Okay.
In my opinion, you can't ever really rest and retire and stop thinking about it if you still own it.
Well,
but it's a great way to make that transition. You can do it for years or just months where you're absentee and you see how it goes. But you can do that for years and then say, okay, now I'm done. I got to really rest. Because think about it. If you're the owner and you're not really there, you're really not stopping your brain from thinking about the business, right? So I consider that a transitional phase anyway, for the sake of the CEO.
See, I consider that dangerous, though.
Do you?
I do. I mean, just because if you really get completely absent from it, then I don't maybe you're still thinking about the business, but you're not really engaged
Right.
to the level that, you're thinking about, hey, what can this be in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years?
Right.
And, doesn't a true absentee owner is not really doing that.
Right. No,
And
that's true. If you're just an investor owner.
Yeah. And then, so the company's going to go like this, and then that's not the time to sell, right?
Yeah.
You want to sell on the way up.
Yeah. And the clients I've seen make it work are not 100% absentee either.
Okay.
They're in once a week, twice a month. They're still in connection. They're still checking things. It's generally a transitional kind of thing, but it can go for a while as if your people, just the right
if
people.
They're really good.
They're the right people in place.
And the
if
argument is, that if you do that, it not only helps you maybe be away from the business more and more, and maybe even start a retirement from that standpoint prior to a sale. But it makes, like you said before, the business is more valuable when people can identify that you're not critical to it. So the proof is in the pudding.
It's like it's sort of like a time to see where the holes and gaps are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if somebody steps away for all but once a week, they can see on Tuesday what fell apart when they come back Friday. Go, okay, that's a hole I need to plug before I try to sell.
Mm-hmm.
If they're away for a month, if you're on vacation for a month and you see things fall apart during that month, you go, okay, here's the holes I have to fill in order to be able to do that again. Because it's almost a test period to make sure. So then by the time that the buyer comes in and says, okay, I only have to go in once a week and then I only do this and that, they know, they're sure, and they'll pay you more for your business.
I just had a really big aha moment on that, because one of the biggest issues that we have with business owners when they sell is they don't know what to do with themselves because they're not going into work anymore. So maybe something like this works really well for trying out, the things that you thought you wanted to do when you no longer were going into work every day.
Right, exactly.
Because,
you cannot retire without a plan.
You can't.
I've actually counseled a couple of folks on this because you don't want to go home and just couch surf. You have to know what you're going to be doing in that time. We live to be 90 and 100 now in the U.S.
Yeah.
We may retire at 65 or 70 or 75, but we're still going to have 20 years possibly, on the outside to do something with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want people getting depressed. I don't want them getting worried about life. I don't want them getting scared they're going to run out of money. So we find something they can do that really keeps their brains active, keeps that creativity going. You go home and just sit and watch TV and eat, your health is going to fall apart. So we need a plan.
Yeah, and that'd be a good way to try it out, because I'll have clients say, "Well, I really want to, I want to go sail, sail the Caribbean."
Yeah.
Well,
what do you do when you get home?
What do you do when you get home? Also, maybe you don't even know that you get horribly seasick, right? So,
please, let's test that out first.
Yeah. So, you want to test out some of these things and make sure that they really are what you want to do. And this could be a good way to do it as you build your leadership team, as you build space. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you create the space, you can create growth out of that. And then from there, maybe you can even create more space for yourself because your leadership team is so good that you become, you're not coming in near as much.
You don't need to.
And then you start getting excited about some of the other things that you can do with your time.
Right.
And then you can feel really, really good about a true transition, maybe to that leadership team, mm-hmm. Maybe to a third party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I have a friend who was really successful, retired, 65 or 67, something like that.
Yeah.
And just unretired and went back into the business, spent 2 years, kind of got all that out of their system, mm-hmm. I wanted to be away from the office kind of thing. And then somebody called and said, we really need you for this position. It was a great leadership position, something they'd done before. Went back to work at the age of 67. And they're loving it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Not sure you'd do that, huh?
I probably would. That's kind of the problem, mm-hmm. because same deal. I love what I do.
Yeah.
I had a client last
So did
week,
they.
and we were talking about this, and and he retired, and he's like, I don't really know what it's the same deal. I have a hard time with this space, this time and space that I
Right.
have, and I said something actually insightful. Doesn't happen very often, but I said, you probably need to think of that time and space that you have as a gift.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because a wide majority of the world, the people in this world, don't get that gift.
That's right. That's true.
And think about it, your whole life up until this point, for the most part, you've been having to give that time away to be able to raise a family, make the money that you have now to give you this space that you have. Think of it as a gift. Think of it as something very, very special that very, very few people get to achieve.
Right.
And go at it from that standpoint. And he was like, wow, that's really good. So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Count your blessings, boy.
Yeah.
It's kind of a basic.
Yeah, absolutely. Count your blessings and just understand that, when you get uncomfortable about being able to have time, you should be uncomfortable, but go find, something to do with that time that is really exciting for you. You don't necessarily have to use that time to go make money anymore.
That's right. That's exactly right. Go and do something that get your creative juices going. Do something that you wouldn't have ever had time to do before. Do something you always wished you could do, but you didn't have time because you were working. Find that thing that brings you that real joy of life and go do it. You can now.
Yeah, I know.
You're retired now. The other area that I get into a lot, it's funny, I seem to end up with either newer CEOs or owners and people towards the end that I have very few that are in the middle, which is interesting, just coincidence, not because I did it that way on purpose. And I think it's because they are transition times. And that's when people think, I need a coach then, right? That's when they reach out because they're new at whatever they're doing. Usually I only work with director level and up. Mostly I work with CEOs and owners. But when they're newer at it, maybe they've been in it a year or two and they're not really sure what direction to go or how strong should I be about things, or, what personality do I want to put on when I'm becoming the CEO? And that's dangerous. We want to be who we are all the time. And so with the new CEOs, a lot of times it's about drawing out what's really good about that person and teaching them to focus it on what they're doing and not having them sort of put on this persona or this mask of CEO, which they tend to do because they think there's some image they have in their mind of this is what it's supposed to be like. And
the imposter syndrome.
It's imposter syndrome. And so we get into that a lot with the newer CEOs more so than, of course, the ones transitioning out.
Yeah, that is hard. I mean, because it's just, I remember, my first job was a division officer on a ship, and talk about imposter syndrome. Because I mean, I just got out of college. I didn't know anything.
Right.
And I have a division of sailors, half of them are older than I am.
Right.
All of them know more than I do about their job.
Right.
Yet, I'm supposed to lead them.
Right.
That was a really interesting, difficult, high growth environment. Let's just put it that way.
Well, coaches are not always the best players.
Yeah.
If you think about sports teams, you were the leader.
Yeah.
Whether or not you had all the experience in doing the thing, you were still the manager. You're still the leader, the coach for that group. And so if you think about sports teams, the coaches are not always the best players. They're the ones that can explain it. They can articulate it. They can show how to correct. They can spot the mistakes. That's the secret to the leadership and coaching.
I think so. I think the secret is that you using that space and that creativity to try to identify what it is, your team needs, and then providing it to them.
And being open to hearing it. So the communication skills can be, they vary a lot depending on your personality and your circumstances and how, whether you woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning and all that. And so the communication skills and the consistency of that and talking to people the way they need to be spoken to instead of the way we think is comfortable for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's another piece of the be a little uncomfortable. You're not doing it the way you like it. You're doing it the way your team likes it. You're doing it the way they need you to do it, this communication, because you need them to hear you. You need them to understand. You need that message to be clear. And most people don't focus on that. They aren't very intentional about the language they use when they're talking to their teams. They're just telling them the way they would tell them. And a lot of times you get through quicker, it's more efficient, they understand you better if you can think about what they need.
Yeah, and then say it over and over
And over and over
again. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes a long time sometimes for things to settle in, sometimes as many as 7 to 21 repetitions.
It takes a lot of patience.
It takes tons of patience.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Tons of patience. That's not a trait I normally have, but the longer I'm a coach, the more I have it. And when I am in coaching mode, because I'm on the phone with someone or sitting across from them, there's little tricks and tips that I do to just keep myself focused on what they're saying and not try to think about what I'm going to answer.
Sure.
That's so hard to do. And you have to be super self-aware for that.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is another key to being a great leader.
Yeah.
How am I reacting? Why am I reacting that way? How am I modeling the right behavior? A lot of people aren't very self-aware, so we can teach you how to do that too.
Yeah. So, Lisa, you stay very active, and I know you wrote your book, which was about dogs and leadership.
Taking in strays, right? That one is about, leadership lessons from unexpected places, how my animals taught me leadership lessons. It was a really fun book to write. It came out in 2013.
Yeah, and then you've written another book since then.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you. In 21 or 2, I can't remember now, 21 I think, I released one called Abiding Strategies. The book title is plural. My business company name is singular, Abiding Strategy. Wrote the book Abiding Strategies. I know it's confusing, but it's a great book.
It could be just The Dude Abides.
I have so many people make that joke. That's funny. The dude abides, the chick abides, I guess. Yeah. Abiding Strategies is all about, the subtitle is Build Your Best Business Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about the strategy work I do. So how to be a strategic leader, and then how to build a strategy plan, and then how to help your people, hire the right people, orient them and all that to make the plan work. And I love doing strategy sessions. It's one of my sort of hallmark products.
So when you do your strategy sessions, you do them within a single company?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. People hire me to come in and I spend a day. We only need a day. There's not a ton of homework. I'm not writing you an 87-page strategy plan that you're going to put in a binder and stick on a shelf. It doesn't work.
Right.
So you get a visual aid at the end, sketched out for you. You can create that however you want to. You get all the accountability pieces. There's a workbook to follow so that you know how to actually implement the plan.
Okay.
And then if needed, I can do continuing coaching, or sometimes I do inside the company small group cohorts where we get together once a quarter and we talk about how the plan is going, and what's going wrong, and how do we fix it. And we can't talk about anything else during those times. We make sure that we're accountable to the plan itself. It's so much fun. I love working with.
Okay, so these strategy sessions you do, and then you also have some groups that you coach with as well.
Peer groups, yeah. 2 right now. I might be adding a third one. I haven't decided yet, but I have a large business group and a small business group. I am a Vistage chair, and one of my groups is through Vistage. And it's just so much fun to have people sit around the table together. One of them's really small; it's only 5 people, but we just help each other with our business problems. We talk about what's going on. I do in my non-Vistage group. It's an education group. I teach for them, and then in the Vistage group, it's really processing issues, working through things together, and so. It's a lot of fun to have the people around the table once a month and learn what they're up to. And some of them also get coaching from me. Not all of them do, but some.
Yeah, and I found with business owners, there's two worlds. There's those that's completely foreign to them, actually coming into a peer group like that, and then others like me and like you that it's very familiar. Where you understand that there is the opportunity within these study groups, peer groups, whatever it is. Be able to talk about a lot of things that you just can't really talk about with anybody else.
That's right. Lonely at the top.
Yeah, very lonely. And and just, it's not even just the coach, but just that level of leaders within a group like that. Every time I ever see a process issued in a group like that, blows me away.
Yeah.
I mean, the ideas and the creativity that comes out,
it's amazing.
It takes your breath away.
Well, the other thing it does is teaches you that everyone has the same problems: people, processes, profits. I mean,
Bunch of P's.
People, processes, profits, product. It's just the same for all of us. And the cool thing is, and the reason I do what I do, part of it is because humans don't change that much. We're the same now that we were 50 years ago, and we're pretty much the same as we're going to be 50. I mean, in 1,000 years, maybe there'll be some changes, but right now, I can study how a human being works. I can know a little bit about how the brain processes things. I can understand about the electromagnetic field coming off the heart. It makes us need the connection in person. The whole remote thing is okay as long as it's not all we do. I can take that knowledge and I can apply it sort of over top almost any issue somebody's got and find the root, find the problem. That's the first piece. The second piece is the function of running a great business really doesn't change based on the industry. You're a good leader, you're a good manager, you do have processes and procedures, you're consistent about things. Those things are standard. So I can talk to a shoemaker, I can talk to a metal recycler, I can talk to a finance company, I can talk to somebody who runs homes for disabled people or a charity. The overlying pieces of the humanity of it and the business structure, they don't change. So I can apply that everywhere, and I help more people that way. Plus, I like the variety. I like learning how all these other businesses function. So there's a basic human thing there that just really makes me happy to be working in it.
I love it. Cool. I like the way you have a couple of different ways that you can do it within the business with the leader themselves or through a peer group type structure. That's really cool.
And once a year I run a training session. It varies when it is, but it's a half a day thing where we talk about whatever's new and I bring in speakers.
Yeah.
That's completely separate from everything else. It's just fun.
Is that usually when is that usually?
It's usually in the summer, like late summer. I think this year we'll probably do August in 25.
Okay.
And we did it in July this year. It's a lot of vacations in July, so it wasn't the best attendance, but we had a great time, really good speakers, and we'll just do that every summer.
Okay.
At some level. It's a public event. I usually publish it out on my website, and then we meet in Trophy Club. I have a place in Trophy Club.
Yeah. Nice. Well, good. Well, man, thanks for coming on again.
You're welcome.
Being a guinea pig.
Has it been 45 minutes already? Wow, that was fast.
Wow. Yeah. We're about wrapping it up.
That's awesome.
And I really like what you said there at the end. I thought, man, that's a great place to end. Just that, as humans, we're all so very similar. Mm-hmm. We're all very similar as leaders. The way we can be successful within our company really doesn't change from industry to industry, but there's just some basic little kernels of assistance that you can provide that can get us there. So that's very exciting.
Yeah.
So Lisa, how do we get in touch with you if we want to talk to you about some of this stuff further or just kind of share information?
Thank you. abidingstrategy.com.
Okay.
Or Lisa at abidingstrategy.com.
Like it.
Or my phone number, if you want to shoot me a text, is 850-528-2121.
Okay.
I'm accessible. Let me know how I can help.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for being on. And everybody, thanks for tuning in today. We do this every other week. As I always say, we're always looking for great stories, great leaders, great coaches and consultants to come on and make us better. So if you have any ideas along that way, just shoot me a text or an email. My information is obviously within the show notes, and we'd love to see what you have to say. Everybody have a great week and take care. Bye-bye.